Hey, what's up everyone? It's Bigfoot. I'm doing this week's video around planning for my hike. I've had a few people ask me about this element, and I've had a lot of questions just that on the trail, off the trail, about how I plan to do this 100-day through hike and be able to accomplish it. So really starting back in, I think it was 2013, 2014, when I decided I was going to through hike the Appalachian Trail, was when I really started doing research. I started doing research on YouTube, which is probably the reason why most of you found my channel. And I started with looking at gear lists because I really wanted to know and dial in my gear because I knew that'd be a critical piece of my through hike. So I started looking at gear lists, and I don't know how many gear videos I watched. I feel like it was like 1,000. I don't know if that's embellishing a little bit, but it felt like that. And then through that portal, I really found some great channels that started to open up doors for other things with planning for the Appalachian Trail, what other through hikers have done with their resupplies, and what they are doing to prepare physically and mentally, and so on and so forth. So YouTube was a huge deal for me with preparing. I'll be honest, before I started researching the Appalachian Trail, I didn't really use YouTube that much. And although I did from time to time, but I don't even think I had a YouTube account. So anyway, that kind of really opened up a lot of portals for me, and I thought probably some of the best information that I learned through research was from YouTube. So going to my gear, I knew that because of the time that I would have to hike my through hike, that I didn't really have time to learn a lot of the things that a lot of through hikers have the time and opportunities to learn on the trail, and then really react and adapt to. And I just didn't want to waste time with that if I could prevent that. So I anticipated that, and when I started buying my gear, I spent most of my time buying my gear at REI. I love REI. They have the best warranty out there. They cover all their products for a whole year, and if you're ever unhappy, no questions asked, you can go back and exchange, return, whatever. So I started with a lot of stuff from REI just to get familiar with what I liked, what I didn't. And there was quite a few things that I found out that worked well for me, and things that didn't work well for me. So it wasn't until I think the late summer of 2015 that I stumbled upon Z-Packs through Redbeard, and really started to look deeper into ultralight backpacking, and really looked out and researched what were the best ultralight backpacking solutions, with knowing again the challenge I had with doing this hike in 100 days. So I believe it was about a month later that I placed my order with Z-Packs for much of my gear that I hiked with, that you saw in my gear video. And what I did was, once I received my ultralight gear, I basically continued to just dial in my pack. I think I spent all in all about a year, maybe a year and a few months with dialing in all of my gear to really learn and understand what worked out the best, what didn't work out, what did I need, what didn't I need, what was useless, what was useful. So that was, I think, a really key piece. Now, through my entire through hike, I think that I did a pretty significant job with dialing in my gear, because I made really little changes to my entire gear setup during the course of my entire through hike. Now, what to test my gear, I started doing pre-hikes. Now, one thing that I strongly encourage everyone to do is to really understand their body. I will tell you that, as you know, I think the figure is like, 3 out of 4 people that intend to through hike the Appalachian Trail don't make it. Maybe it's like 80%, 75 to 80%. Most of the people that I met that were not able to make it was because of either the challenge of not understanding what they were really going to go through and how hard it was going to be, or because of injuries. And most people really overexerted themselves. So understanding your body is a really key piece. And I've done a lot of things in my life that has challenged me and my body, both physically and mentally. So I had a pretty good idea what I knew I could accomplish, what I knew that I could challenge myself to do, and what I couldn't. So having said that, though, there's no better way to prepare for a hike, to condition your mind and condition your body than doing pre-hikes. So I was living down in Missouri, and the closest area that really could have any replication with the terrain that I was going to go through and see on the Appalachian Trail was the Ozark Trail in the Ozark Mountains. So I spent, I believe, maybe the better part of the last 3 months before I left to go on my through hike, really every weekend planning and doing pre-hikes up in the on the Ozark Trail there. I did do some things prior to that as well, some week-long trips, but I will tell you that most of those really weren't geared around the Appalachian Trail. It was more of challenging myself, like doing the rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon and things like that. So, but I one thing that that I wish I would have done was spent a little bit more time, longer time on these pre-hikes, with being able to understand what happens, because there's things that you can learn and understand hiking out for a couple days, but when you hike out, 7-8 days, there are other challenges that come up into play. You typically have to resupply sometime during that span, and there are things, your body starts to wear down differently than when you're only out there. You're not as fresh, and just things like that, and your things start to become a little more mental. And but most of my pre-hikes were just 2-day pre-hikes, 3-day pre-hikes. And once I was doing that, I was also researching really what I could accomplish my first 3 weeks of my through hike. I knew that it would be imperative that I started my through hike strong, but I didn't want to make the mistake of pushing myself so hard the first few weeks, overexerting myself and really injuring myself. But at the same time, I couldn't get behind either. So from when I started, which was April 23rd, my real goal was to get to trail days and make it 2 trail days, Damascus, Virginia, from the time that I started, which had a lot to do with actually when I started. So I figured that if I get there in 3 weeks, that would be a great start. And I also wanted an opportunity to really see trail days and meet a lot of the gear folks, especially Z-Packs. So that was really my first big accomplishment that I wanted to set. So I did tentatively plan where I wanted to camp each night for the first 3 weeks. I will tell you that most of the time it didn't work out very well. Sometimes it did, but more so for averaging. So 3 weeks, I know I had to go 400. I think it was like 470 miles to Damascus or something. I can't remember anymore right now. But anyway, when you look at how many miles you need to hike at the end of first week, 2 week, 3 week, I would say averaging it, I was pretty close. But where I wanted to stop really was different because of all the factors that come into play, like weather and how you get started and what time you actually get on the trail and how long of a lunch break you take, and if you meet people and you want to go into town to resupply, and so on and so forth. So but it did give me a barometer as to how far behind or ahead that I was. And the other thing that I did was I sent my first 3 resupply packages to various spots in the first 400 miles, based really on what some other through hikers have said about what areas were better resupplies, which ones weren't, and then which ones were convenient that I would not have to get off trail at all to resupply, so I could just keep on trucking and save myself 3, 4, 5 hours. When you are getting off trail to resupply, there's a lot of factors into play. It's really difficult, unless if you're literally going through a trail town, to be able to get off the trail and get back on the trail like in an hour or two. You first of all, if most of the time when you get to a trail town, you got to hitchhike, and that takes time, and that can be a variable that honestly, sometimes I got hitched. I hitched a ride in like the first car that passed in like 2 minutes, and there's been times it took me like 2 hours. So it really depends. And once I got into town, you resupply, you want to eat, and then you kind of feel a little lazy, and then you want to get some ice cream, and before you know it, it's like 4 hours, and I don't know how the time flies so fast, but then you got to hitch back, and again, playing the same game as you are. It's easier usually to hitch back because you're in a town and there's more traffic around, but again, it's that variable of getting that hitch back. So anyway, that was definitely something that I wanted to be able to minimize those first few weeks. So from a pre-planning standpoint, that's a lot of the things that I did do, and I think all of those things helped me a lot out on the trail. Now, during the course of my journey, things that came up that I didn't really anticipate. The first thing, I never would have thought this. So as you know, I recorded my entire journey on YouTube, and I will tell you that it was very challenging finding places and time, especially time, to upload my videos. So I would do my videos, I would edit them, and then I would have to upload them from iMovie where I edited them up to my phone, and then I had to upload them to YouTube. And sometimes you're really at the mercy of whatever the broadband speed is at the hostel that you are at, or the hotel that you're at. So, I think in the first half of my journey, I spent many times stuck in town for like 4 to 6 hours just trying to upload videos. So it wasn't until I was able to figure out how to upload my videos while I was sleeping by basically turning my auto lock off to never on my phone, so then I could basically sleep and still upload videos and not have to waste any extra time. Another thing was how to hitch. I've never hitched before in my life, and that was something that was really new to me. It sounds funny, you just stick out your thumb, right? Well, when you first start hitching, there's a few things that you have to keep in mind. Number one is where you're standing. Is it in the best place? Can people see you? And especially the area that's in front of you, is there actually enough room, and is it convenient and safe for the people that are giving you a ride to pull over? There were so many times I can remember in the beginning when I look back that it just didn't make sense where I was standing, and it was very hard and difficult for someone to pull over and give me a hitch because of there wasn't any space, there wasn't enough room, or it was really hard to get back on the road because of the traffic or something like that. So those were things that I just didn't really understand, and again, it was just a little uncomfortable first because I never have done that before. I'll tell you that when I got into towns, some of the tactics I started doing, so after I would say the first 500, 600, 700 miles of hitching, which actually, when I look back on it, I don't think I really had a hitch until somewhere in Virginia. I don't even think I hitched the first 400 miles. And the main reason for that was there was a few towns that actually have shuttles. You go through towns, so it wasn't until I got really into Virginia that I had to start hitchhiking. But it had to be somewhere halfway through my journey that I got tired of playing the element of how long it would take for someone to pick me up, especially when I got behind a little bit. So a lot of times what I would do is I would just, instead of sitting on the road and hitchhiking, I would go around and ask some folks, if they could give me a ride. And that didn't work great. So what I ended up started doing many times is I'd have like a $5 bill with me, and I would tell someone, hey, would you be able to give me a hitch back to the trail? I'll give you $5. And I'll tell you, 90% of the time, people gave me a hitch, and most of the time, they didn't even want the money. So for whatever reason, that worked out really, really well, and I had no problem paying a little bit of money because time for me was really important. And again, people didn't even want the money, and I don't know, for whatever reason, that worked out really well. And then, the other thing that I didn't really realize, and this didn't really come on my pre-hikes, was when I would hike, and I would hike lots of miles, I averaged obviously 22 miles a day, and I sweat a lot, and with the amount of miles, the amount of mountains I was climbing, I was always soaked. I was always wet. And many times when I got into camp, it was, getting close to dusk. I didn't have time for my clothes to dry out, and sometimes it was so humid that even if I hung them up, they wouldn't dry out by morning. So it got really old with putting on my wet clothes in the morning, and sometimes I think I stayed in my sleeping bag for like 30 minutes just trying to figure out how to get out of the tent, out of the bag, and put on the wet clothes, because that was the thing that I looked forward to least. And once I got my clothes on, like after 5 minutes, it was totally fine. It was just that initial shock. So this kind of goes back into what I do differently. So I would have a the first thing I would do differently, looking back on my through hike, is I would try to plan to do longer through hikes. If you have time, plan a week, and there's a lot more experiences that you'll be able to find and go through when you're actually on the trail for that long. I think there's value in doing weekend trips if you don't have time, for sure. But the longer you can be out there, the better. And for me, I think when I was doing my weekend trips, I whatever clothes that I slept in that night, I just would wake up and wear those clothes. And the wet clothes, I would just throw in my pack, because I'm like, why put them on? I didn't really think about it. So I would have done that, because that would have helped me understand what I was going through, and it would have made it easier. Uh, and another thing that I would do differently is, if I could, I try to get as close uh, to replicating the terrain that you're going to see in the Appalachian Trail as you can. If you can go to the AT, do it. There's obviously no better place to do pre-hikes than the actual Appalachian Trail itself. If I could spend more time and have done that, I think that would have really helped out, really understand what I was getting into, even though I had a pretty good idea. A lot of people that hike the trail, honestly, they have no clue what they're getting into. They get out there and, they think about, yeah, walking 15 miles a day is not that big of a deal. I can do it back at home, and I don't know if they think about just walking in the trails at home or walking on paved paths, what it is, but honestly, it is a shock. It is a big, big shock. So if you can get out there, you can get on the trail. If you can get on the AT trail, even better. And if you can spend a week, a long period of time, and long enough where you're going to have to resupply and experiencing the things that you'll see on a week-to-week basis, I think there is no better value in that. Another thing that I would do differently was try to get more variety of weather changes, and experiencing climate changes than I did. So most of the time when I was doing my pre-hikes, I didn't really run into a lot of rain. And honestly, during the through hike of 16, we got really lucky. There was a lot of dry days. And I will tell you though, the days that it did rain, the days that it poured, I think the hardest thing was setting up your tent for the first time when it's downpouring rain. And the first time I did it, I miserably failed, because I really had never set up my Z-Packs duplex tent in the pouring rain. And I got so much water in. I don't even know how it was possible to get as much water as there was in it. So the more you can spend out there, set up your tent in the pouring rain. Depending on when you are through hiking, if you're going to experience snow, go out there and hike in the snow. Go out there and camp out there. Try to replicate the weather that you're going to find on the Appalachian Trail. It's going to help prepare you physically. It's going to prepare you mentally. The biggest thing on the hike is right up here. Is especially for me, through hiking this in 100 days, there was so much pressure on me how to handle that pressure and how to trek on. The only way that I could figure that out was doing a lot of the challenging things that I had done prior to that, with my pre-hikes, with understanding what it was going to be like, how difficult it was going to be. And if I would have had a lot of shock in that area, I don't know. I think I would have quit. But I knew what I was going to be up against for the most part, and that really helped me prepare for it mentally. The mental piece, I cannot tell you how big and how important that is. So another thing that I would do is, knowing what I know now, I would probably have send some different resupply packages to different areas that I know would take more time to get off the trail just because of how far the trail is, the town is off the trail. I'll do another video about, what are some of the resupplies that could be helpful. If you have all the time in the world, it honestly probably doesn't matter a ton. But if you are on a very strict schedule, like you're trying to hike it in 4, maybe even 5 months, yeah, some of those things will probably help out a lot. But one of the challenges that I actually had on the trail was because I was going so fast, so hard, I didn't get a chance to hike with a lot of people other than the Germans for those couple weeks. And it was really tough sometimes resupplying. So obviously I was stoveless. So when I would buy things, it was hard because I didn't have other people to go in together with me on it. So I think if I was hiking with a group, it would have been so much easier to resupply. I could go in together with people, buy bigger, family size things, split them up. It'd be way cheaper, and then it would work out for everyone. With what I was doing, there were times that, like, I know, for example, in Gorham, New Hampshire, the Walmart there, everything was like family size. I don't think like anything that I was eating wasn't in smaller boxes than family size. So I had all this crap, and I didn't really have time to go because it was like a Sunday or something like that. I really didn't want to. No, it was a Saturday, so I didn't want to spend an extra day to wait around for the post office to open Monday morning and send a package up the trail. I just didn't have time for that. And I ran into that a lot, trying to what to do with all this extra food. So a lot of times I just dropped them in hiker boxes, or I just would eat a lot at the hotel, or sometimes I would pack an extra crap that I really want to do, and I wish I probably wouldn't have. But that would have been really helpful too, is having folks that I could have split stuff up with. And again, it would have been a lot cheaper and would have just made a lot more sense. And of course, probably the biggest thing, aside from really through hiking, or excuse me, for doing pre-hikes on the trail, on the Appalachian Trail, was being in better shape. So I was overweight when I started my through hike, and the majority of the reason for that was because I got injured after I ran one of the marathons the fall before, and I really stopped working out for a couple months and gained like 20 pounds. I cannot tell you how much of a difference that it makes when you're lugging an extra 20 or 30 pounds of body fat around up these mountains and down these mountains, up and down, and obviously with the pack that you're carrying. So if I could have been in better shape, I know that I would have had a better level of endurance, even though probably it seems like that I had a really high level of endurance because of how fast I did the trail. But I tell you, I got so strong, especially when I hit about the midpoint and going into the whites. I've never been that strong. It was amazing what I was able to accomplish and what my body was able to do. But being in better shape and shedding a lot of those extra pounds would have helped out quite a bit. So those are really the big things that, when I think about planning, what I did to plan for my through hike, what were some of the surprises to me on the trail, and really what would I do differently. So again, how I planned could be a little bit different than yours, just because of a lot of things were planned around just my lack of time that I had. But I think you could probably use some of these things as a blueprint of how to plan for your hike. If you have any questions, go ahead, leave them in the comment below. I'll do my best to answer them. And that kind of wraps it up. Well, thanks everyone again. Stay tuned. I'll throw out a video next week, and like I said, I'll be doing my gear reviews when I get a free Saturday. I'll probably just start doing them one at a time and just upload them. So, all right, guys, Bigfoot out.